wonder how to master the art of the pivot without losing your mind or your team? You aren't alone. Join me and my guest, Shireen Hilal, as we dish out real world wisdom on shaking up those stubborn business plans, letting go of sunk cost energy, and finding your unique North Star. From law firms to casinos, we're exploring how to stay agile, test wild ideas, and make those company shifts feel a little less terrifying and a whole lot more exciting. Are you ready to whack some tradition and embrace the magic of shaking things up? Let's get started. Well, hello everyone. Welcome. And today we are going to be talking about pivoting, the importance of pivoting. I think this is a very timely topic because there are so many people I know in my life that are facing some professional and personal pivots. And I am just elated that Miss Shireen has come into my universe to help talk through how to do this, how to approach it, what to think about, so that we can have successful pivots. So welcome to the show, Shireen. How are you?
Thank you. I'm great and appreciate you bringing me on as your guest today.
Oh, look, it's my pleasure because, it's my show. I'm just grateful people want to play around in my universe occasionally.
Yeah, why not? It's fun.
So tell us a little bit about yourself and why pivoting and kind of discussing that topic is so important to you.
Sure. So a little bit about me. I have a boutique consulting firm, Maior, and we are the partner to professional services firms that know that good enough is no longer good enough for them. And what that means is we help law firms, accounting firms, wealth management, and other service-based businesses with increasing revenue and profitability, building better growth strategies, and standing out in an increasingly crowded market. I think this topic is important because I get asked about it all the time, right? And in different ways. So meaning all the way from where do we start with annual planning and how do we actually figure out what next year's initiatives should be to wait a minute, it's spring and turns out we're already off plan or the market has changed. And what do we do now? And how do we make better decisions? And I think the truth is the market isn't waiting for your partner retreat. So you have to have a way to make better decisions in real time for your business or in your life because things don't happen on annual cadences.
What are you talking about? Annual calendars. That's the intention of quarterly reports is we wait for these reports to make big decisions.
Yeah, and too often, those reports are more of a regurgitation of what's happened and a lot less about, but so what now what, right? What are the 2 or 3 things we can be doing different this quarter, let's say, or this month or with this team that's gonna move the dial? And so if data is used mostly as a report card, which is unfortunately how it's used in a lot of organizations, it's not that helpful.
Well, it's the whole concept of lagging and leading indicators.
Yeah,
So often, to what your point, that report card is a lagging indicator. It's reflecting what has happened,
right.
where you have done well, or where that initiative was. Again, was past tense. It's kind of where you were. It's not where you are today. And I feel like, to your credit, to what you're saying, I don't know if companies are always very good at picking up on what their leading indicators are. So what's the data that's telling you what's coming? How do you know when the market is shifting proactively? So how do you get ahead of the shift versus react to the shift?
Yeah, and even if you see the data, have you built an organization, and this is regardless of size, that knows how to take that information, and are you agile enough to change your plan or break your plan and do something different without letting all the air out of the balloon with your team, right? Because part of this is, I feel leadership often thinks they have to have some great grand plan. And then they have to sort of hide the ball if, well, that's not really working anymore. So we're now going to quietly sunset that initiative. Well, you just lost trust with your team. So this is also, how do you actually make the pivot happen? I would say from more of an execution point of view, as well, and make sure you're bringing your teams along with you and that they are excited for the shift, which I think is another issue with it. So yeah, I thought this was a great topic today. And to your point, there's no better time to talk about it. I think there is a palpable sense of anxiety in the market. And I think it's on a lot of levels. It's for people that are like your W-2 employees. I think there's a lot of folks that feel, and we were talking about this a little before we started recording, just because I hadn't seen you in a couple months and we were catching up. But, I think you have employees that are very concerned about, I may not be happy with the job I'm in, but I'm not even sure I can find something else. So I'm just going to kind of put up and shut up. You have leaders that feel completely overwhelmed. They're not sure where to go next. And so how are you supposed to lead a team when you don't know sort of where you're going yourself? And I think there's a lot in between there that, to my point earlier, just it's not communicated well. And that's a piece of the problem as well. But, you know, I think the ultimate question is, how do you find the North Star, right? Or do you think it's a different question?
No, I think North Star is the point, right? So if you
Yeah.
don't know what your why is,
Start there. Yeah.
if you don't know what the intention of even being in your company is, or it's very hard for you to then navigate the what, right? So if you don't know your why, you don't know how to handle the what or the how. And I think that applies for companies as well. Because you said something that I wanted to ask you about when you talk about companies and the culture. Like, how do you create a culture that can manage these moments better, right? And so you gave an example of
Yeah.
communication, because I'm immediately thinking about, I've worked for a lot of companies and a lot of leaders where we have priorities, and then we're chugging ahead on those priorities, and then suddenly, like, that's not important anymore, but we don't know
Right. They just hit the cutting room floor and you're like, so next time
or
you walk into a planning meeting,
or they
you
haven't cut, not
yeah,
necessarily, they haven't cut them. You still have to do them, but now there's something else that's gonna replace this. Like, it's going
right.
on maybe number 4, and now you've got a new number 1. Because every nothing ever stops. So because I've seen this happen, and I think this is an area where companies don't help themselves. And I think this might get into some of our conversation, is where we
Yeah.
don't really have an honest assessment of priority. And when priorities have to shift, what gets let go of? What do we
Right.
simply say? I know it's sunk cost. Like, we have a hard time as humans letting go of sunk cost energy.
Yeah,
Uh,
we do.
and I think kills more companies than anything. But I would love to talk to you or get your thoughts on when we start to talk about what is the right kind of culture you need to handle these kinds of moments. Other than like
Yeah.
understanding the why, what is something that you see or you've done with your clients that is like, okay, this is missing and you have to start here first?
Well, so I think it's a few things. There's the culture piece. So I'll address that first since that's what you asked. And then I think it's, how do you know where to pivot to and how to make a better decision if you know what you're doing today isn't working? And so let's start with setting the right foundation with your culture. So first of all, I think from the jump, how you talk to your teams about priorities is important. And so something, for example, I like to say when I'm setting a goal, I used to say this when I was like a COO of a law firm, when I was leading a division at KPMG. I would say, we're going to try this, but Moses didn't bring it down from the mountain. We can change it. So I think from the onset, having a point of view that this is not written in stone and we are going to try and test is important. Number two, you reinforce that with how you approve and fund new priorities and initiatives. So what most firms do is, great, here's the budget for the year, here's the initiative or the thing we're doing, now go. What happened when you're off track and the money's spent? A better way to do it, think of how tech firms do it, stage gate your funding, and even have almost like a Shark Tank style sort of way of working your way through these initiatives. So, for example, if it's we're going to try to go into a new market and try for a new type of customer, right? We've done historically well with, let's say, this area and this area, but there's this new area that we've never gotten into. But we think that it's going to be easy and we're going to try to break ground there. Great. Instead of funding it in its entirety, release a portion of funds and ask the team to come back with initial findings. You start low and slow. You
Mm-hmm.
do a pilot. You maybe even say, why don't you test more than one idea with the idea that we don't expect them all to succeed? So when you set it up that way, you're already telling your team it's okay to fail. It's okay to pivot. And we may change course if that's what the market's telling us to do. I think the other piece that you can bake in, if it doesn't make sense to stage gate, is just have clear kill criteria. What is it going to take for us to say, to your point, this project's dead and we're moving on? No more life support, right? Like it needs to move off the agenda. Um, I think you said something important about the priorities still there, but it just kind of slides down the list. When you start noticing that you're going from, we'll just address that at the next meeting and it keeps getting punted, you need to ask yourself whether your team has energy to execute on it. Most people, most teams cannot do more than a few things really well at one time. Everyone's heard the old adage, if I throw you one ball, you'll catch it. If I throw you five, you'll probably catch none. So help your team and set them up for success by giving them a few priorities. One thing I even love to do in a firm is I will sometimes say, if we have a bunch of things we need to work on and they all seem high priority, we're going to focus on one initiative a quarter. I know you're tempted to get like 8 things done now, but the truth is we're going to hit 6 months and none of it'll get done. Instead, we're going to highly focus in one area for a quarter, and everybody is going to rally around that. And so I'll give you a very real example of one that I did recently. I had a law firm that had profitability issues. And so I said, great, we're going to focus this quarter on profitability. Everybody at the firm has a role. If you're an assistant, it's your job to think about how your timekeepers who are actually billing by the hour, so paralegals, partners, associates, they need to get their time in daily and you need to hound them for it, because every study, Kim, shows that when you wait a month to put in your time, of course, you're going to leave out that point one phone call and the point two quick email and the thing you picked up the phone while you were out getting groceries and you forgot to log it. We don't have great memories, and we certainly don't have great memories for point one phone calls a
Mm-hmm.
month down the road. So it's get the time in. Also, teach the assistants how to edit time for common mistakes, vague entries, things that clients will push back on. Then, if you're talking to your partners, have the conversation on scope and budget. What can they be doing better to set these engagements up at the onset so that when we get at the back end, we're not having clients asking for you to write down your time or take entries off the bill.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe you're also doing some soft skills training across the firm on things like, what do we do if a client can't pay? How do we handle it? Do we offer payment plans? What's the right way to deal with it? Number two, what do we do if we have a disgruntled client? Like, these are things you can be doing that in this quarter, you really highly focus, get it shored up, and now you move on to the next initiative, the next quarter, once people are in a groove and it becomes natural. I think the second point, though, aside from having the right culture and creating sort of, I would say, a model in which it's easier to pivot and get people to focus, is how do you pick where you're going to pivot to,
Mhm.
right? So I have a lot of leaders that come to me for strategic planning, and they always want to know, like, what should our plan be? Where do we go? Where should we be putting our investment? It is always easier to meet demand than to try to create it. And so the first place I tell firms to look, go to your clients. And by the way, forget what your competitors are doing. It is so tempting, especially now where there is so much anxiety and everyone is scared and doesn't know where to go next, to just say, well, I'm going to look at my larger peer and do what they're doing. But here's the problem with that. Your best case scenario is mediocrity. And so if you're looking to be any kind of leader or resonant in your own market, the best way to make the decision is to actually obsess about your clients and follow what they are telling you to do. And so I'll give you another very real example. I was working with a consulting firm that was wondering where they were going to put their investments for their next year. And I said, great, who are your top 5 clients? Let's have meetings with them. Free strategy meetings.
Mhm.
So for them, it's free strategic planning. For us, I want to know, where are they putting their investment in the next 72 months? Because you got to meet the market where it is. You've got to do things that meet their need. You already have a buyer that knows, likes, and trusts you. So why wouldn't we create our next service offering around what our best clients are telling us they want to buy? Right? And so instead of wondering, everyone else is opening up a Dallas office, do we open up a Dallas office? I don't know. Do your clients need a Dallas office? Or are you just going to open one and hope that the phone rings? And so it doesn't mean that you can't just break new ground without your clients, but just know that that is a way harder way to bring in new revenue than to actually meet the existing demand of people that are already in your ecosystem and with whom you already have a very clear relationship. So what do you think? Is that a helpful starting point?
Oh my goodness. I have so many little notes down here. You sparked
Good.
so many thoughts. So I'll start with the thing you ended on. So I really loved um when you talked about meeting demand versus creating it. Ever wonder how to master the art of the pivot without losing your mind or your team? Well, you aren't alone. Join me and my guest, Shireen Hilal, as we dish out real world wisdom on shaking those stubborn business plans, letting go of sunk cost energy, and finding your unique North Star. From law firms to casinos, yes, really, we're exploring how to stay agile, test wild ideas, and make those company shifts feel a little less terrifying and a lot more exciting. Ready to wax some tradition and embrace the magic of shaking things up? Let's get started. And I think there's something very powerful. And so it immediately reminded me of back in my career, I used to work on an innovation team, and our job was to always create solutions before they became a problem, to be innovative.
Oh,
So, and it was specific to safety, theft, and fraud of a retail company, right?
okay, interesting.
And so the thing that I think you will find interesting, and where it kind of resonated with what you were saying, was our job was we were tasked with going through benchmarking, be creative, go find solutions. We know where behavior is trending. And so what we decided is we would never benchmark against other retailers,
Mm,
because to quote you, then we're just mimicking mediocrity. We're going to,
yeah,
because let's be clear, if it's a theft issue, if they crack it in one retailer, they're going to crack it in ours because we're just
correct.
mimicking what someone else is doing. And so what we chose to do was we looked at other industries completely. And so what are they doing? So for
I
instance,
love that. I do
you know,
that all the time. It's
we
such a
looked
great
at oil
strategy.
and gas and said,
Yep.
they have that challenges. What are they doing that even though it's not apples for apples,
Right.
but what strategies are they having? What technology are they trying?
Right.
How are they implementing things? We looked at casinos because you want to talk about.
Oh, I love it. What a great example.
And so there was a lot of that where we were given license to say, I don't want to go mimic another big box store in what they're doing.
No, I
But how
love
do I
that.
give myself permission to say, okay, on the surface, this looks insane, but they're doing interesting things. And
Well, and they may be doing it better than you, to your point on casinos. I mean,
let's because like a perfect example because we AI is so hot and it's everywhere. But casinos were on the forefront of facial technology, facial recognition. They
yeah,
were the leading drivers behind that technology because they wanted to figure out people who were card counting and who were just
correct.
like hitting casino to casino to casino. And so when you think about where we are now in that technology, where we just kind of take it for granted, I just flew and TSA's taking my photo. Like
Right.
we take it for granted, but 2 decades ago, that was revolutionary and casinos were already way ahead of the game. And
Yeah.
so, one of the things I thought was important when you're thinking about and you're in this place of stuff's not working and, one, you have a client base. Like we knew we had consumers. They're going to buy our services, buy our goods, whatever it is. So whatever your business is or whatever you're doing in your company, you know who your customer is. Is there somewhere else you can look and say it's an analogous industry? If you really are feeling lost about where you're going, because the demand's there, clearly. Maybe you just have to meet it in a different way. And you have to give yourself permission to take the blinders off and just try something completely insane. And I will tell you, like that, to this day, that was still one of the most entertaining, enjoyable jobs I ever had because we were given permission to do wild stuff and to try wild things. And going back to something you said,
Yeah, that's a fun role.
well, yeah. Well, going back to what you said earlier, it's almost like the seed funding. So
Yes.
we would take these ideas and then we would do pilots and we would do them based on
Amazing.
criteria and there was segmented, maybe it was segmented risk or maybe it was segmented geography or whatever it was. But we were tasked. Well, first off, before we could even do a pilot, we had to do a baby pilot to even get it in front of a board who said we could get more budget to go do a
Right.
bigger pilot. And so before, because I worked for a Fortune 50 company. And so when we rolled stuff out, it was a multi-million dollar initiative. And so you couldn't just
Yeah.
roll it out. Like, so there were so many steps in the process that allowed us to pilot and fail without it being detrimental to operations, without it being detrimental um to the culture, without it being detrimental to just employee engagement, because it was never the expectation that this is what we were going to do. We were trying. Um, and we also had criteria. If it wasn't working, the idea needed to be completely rethought and morphed, or you just needed to kill it.
Right.
And the other thing that I want to talk about, like, just because I think it's an interesting concept, when you're talking about these ideas of like, you don't have to go all in to be successful. You can try things that allow you the ability to pivot very, very quickly, which is what I loved about it, is that you could try something and be like, ooh, well, we're seeing success here in this aspect, but man, this is not performing the way we want. But because you haven't gone full throttle, you can tweak it, you can pivot it. But you talked about killing an idea. Well, this organization had something, and I'm sure they call it something different now, just given our current culture of people as we are people, but we called it a kill board. And so when you
Right.
idea that you could take it in front of a group of peers and leaders, and you were to pitch your idea. And the whole purpose of that pitch was for them to tell you every reason it would fail.
I love it. I
That
mean, you
sounds
have to have
awful, but think about it from this standpoint.
that's the role of the devil's advocate.
Well, but the beauty of it is when we fall in love with an idea, it's no different than like a dating relationship. we tend to not see the red flags. We
Right.
see the stuff we want to see. And
Exactly.
so this forced you to hear from every perspective of what
Yeah.
could possibly go wrong and allowed you to then hear it, address it, or either accept it as a risk or do something and plan for it, change something. And so I feel like that whole dynamic was set up to make the pivots and the new strategies or the new priorities. Once we went full throttle, it had gone through a process where we felt confident it was going to serve and it would be successful.
Right. And then you can keep iterating it from there because
Right.
the truth is, even with that exercise, the kill board or devil's advocate or whatever
Yeah.
we want to call it, even then we know no battle plan survives contact. So once you're actually out there, you're again going to hear from the market. And so it's a cyclical, you constantly have to see what will the market tell us and how do we move from here. I can't tell you how many meetings I have sat in boardrooms where it's constant like death by analysis or we're all sitting here and I'm like, we need to leave this room and talk to an actual prospect but Kim, it's the same with your frontline employees, by the way. They also get ignored in this. And I had a firm with a huge, ferocious accounts receivable balance, right? And the first question I asked, what has your billing department told you? Oh, I don't know. We haven't asked them. How about we start there with the people that are hearing from your client on why they're not paying before we try to create some grand collection plan based on what we all in this room think might be going on. Leave the corner office and go talk to people and ask.
Yeah.
Um, so it's interesting. I mean, the other problem with copying your competitors, and so I'm going to kind of bring this now full circle to the
Yeah.
culture issue. Man, you really lose your employee trust that way too, because it's very visible to your people when you don't really have a plan, you don't have a North Star, and you're constantly reacting and trying to keep up with the Joneses. It doesn't feel good for them. And they don't feel that they're in an innovative place where they can bring fresh ideas because you're not bringing fresh ideas. The other issue is usually who we copy are the larger peers. So like your market leaders. Here's the problem. Who's saying that they're doing it well? Just because they're large does not mean they're doing it well. And frankly, I've noticed in the industries that I serve, which happen to be more service and less product based,
Yeah.
most of the innovation is happening in the middle market because they're big enough to have some resource to be able to do things, and they're small enough to actually get it done and move fast. Bigger firms, I mean, I'm sure you've seen this. I've seen this. I've been in enterprise organizations and ready to do something and been told, great, the global board is going to look at this at their next meeting, which is in 2 months. And I'm like, I don't think you understand, like, like, is there any sense of urgency? And by the way, in 2 months, we could have had a pilot up and running. Right. Which is why I eventually left and opened my own because I was the person that would just start a pilot on the side anyway.
Well, and to your point, when you think about pivoting, right, which is kind of the topic of understanding business pivots and all those kinds of things, you have to, if things aren't working, at some point you got to try something else. And
Yeah.
the longer you wait, and I mean, there's some point I can understand in a large company, it is a lot more difficult because you have so many people who want to have their pilots done. And, which is why I think having some kind of creating it as part of your culture
Yeah.
cool. And then figuring out how to finance that or not finance that, or what are your criteria to get financing, however you want to set that up. But at the end of the day, if you just keep doing the same thing over and over again, you're going to get the same result and it's probably going to actually get worse over time. And
Right.
it's that thing of, to your point, like, if you know you're drowning, you don't wait 2 months for the life to ask for the life preserver. You
You
don't
got to
don't drop it
start.
now, it's a little late. Like, you have to start that incremental shift in some direction, and you have to be very, very clear about, "I'm doing this because doing what we've been doing is not working." So,
Right. And so are your
be
people
something different.
empowered to do that
Correct.
in your structure to raise their hand and say, this isn't working and we need a fix. And it's not 18 meetings from now. It's tomorrow. Like we need to change it. And I have an idea and let's put it in motion. I think the other issue you see a lot, especially in today's market, there's an instinct to pull back, cut costs, protect what you have. Most companies play defense. The opportunity at a time like this is to let your greatness emerge. While everybody else is being protective, hit the streets, build new relationships, be smart and targeted about it, right? But I'll give you another real example. I had a client that was looking to increase revenue, but very worried about cost, and in particular, like overextending on marketing and marketing type initiative, but knew they had to be out in the market, right? And so I said, well, look, who says you have to go sponsor these massive conferences that you're always going to? And by the way, are you sure you're even getting that much out of them? You're mostly swanning around with your competitors. What if instead we created our own high value, intimate event? For example, let's pick your biggest sectors. One of them was commercial real estate for them. We're going to host a salon dinner in a private room of a restaurant. It's going to cost you a fraction of going to a conference. And it's going to be 4 of your existing clients and 4 prospects. We're going to put a couple of your own partners there too, of course. But let's get a lot out of this. Number one, most of these executives care more about hearing from their peers than they do about hearing from you. So you're bringing them immense value just by showing up when they know, oh, I get to meet other executives like me. I'm in for the dinner. It's not hearing a pitch from you. I get to meet my peers. Number two, you've built trust. You've heard their issues. So one of the things we did, I met with them the next day for lunch, meaning the partners who I helped put together this dinner. And I said, okay, now tell me everything. What are the biggest issues hitting this market? What did they care about? What's keeping them up at night? What do they need to know? This is our thought leadership plan for you for the next 6 months. They just built it for you.
Mhm.
They just told you what they care about. Again, meet the market where it is.
Yeah.
Won't be like, maybe somebody needs this. So something like that, instead of sponsoring some huge real estate commercial conference, right? And sending a bunch of people and flying them out and you get your logo on it. And by the way, no one cares that your logo's on the lanyard. Right? Like that's never made
Unless
a
it's a super cool lanyard, 'cause people love tchotchkes.
People do love their tchotchkes. I mean, I know for me, when I go to a conference, my husband's like, please just find us water bottles because the number that my stepdaughter leaves on the softball field, like it's just constant. He's like, I'll take any water bottle you can bring back and fit in your suitcase. But otherwise,
To your point, like, it's the value, right? Like,
right.
just because your logo's there, because I guarantee you probably remember some of the people who had a product that you touched.
Totally.
So even though, like, yeah, if you're gonna sponsor, you have to figure out how to do it in the right way. You have to meet people where they are and in what capacity do they need you.
By the way, here's another trick while we're speaking about conferences and knowing your market. One of the cheapest, most effective ways to know what your buyers actually are thinking about is look at their industry's conferences and just pull all the agendas. Pull all the agendas for the biggest, call it 4 to 10 conferences that they have in their industry. And now even throw them in the chat GPT blender and ask, what are the biggest things that they care about? What topics are recurring the most? There you go. That's what they're hearing. That's what they think is important. So now again, it just helps you to take that pulse and have a sense of what's happening. And look, it's the same thing if you're an individual and not a corporation, right? If you're wondering, what do I do about updating my skill set? I don't know that my skills are relevant. I'm not sure what job market I should go into next. Go become the expert on the market's pain points. Don't just scroll those job boards, analyze them. What are the top problems that keep coming up in these job descriptions for the roles that you want? What are the key phrases you're seeing over and over? Like, again, meet the market, right?
No, you're singing a song I fully appreciate, right?
Greatest hit. It's hopefully a greatest hit.
It is a greatest hit. It's so critical, and I like that, whether you're talking about a business, whether you're talking about yourself, I often tell people that if you're trying to mimic what someone else is doing, you're gonna lose every time. And
Yeah,
what people have to do, whether it's a person, whether it's a company, is you have to understand what is your differentiator? What do you bring to the table? What is your strength that maybe your competitors don't have?
right.
And then go do that. And lean into that direction. Walk in that direction. Because I find that what ends up happening is when people start to, and businesses start to do it too. They start to say, well, this is what the industry wants. To your point, do what you're saying. Go use the chat GPT. I prefer Claude Blender. Even, you know,
And
go,
that's good use for it, right? Because that's about like
it's about brainstorming and
a lot of
understanding.
information getting put through the wood chipper. Great.
And I say, go do that. Understand what are
Yeah,
the trends, and then sit back and say, what can I uniquely bring to the table? Where can I uniquely fit here
that's
that
right.
maybe is not like anybody else?
Correct.
Because as we were talking right before this, is we all have a ton of strengths. And even if we do the exact same type of work, our approach is completely different. Our
Yeah,
perspectives are different. Our past lived experiences are not the same. So how we execute the work is probably going to be a little different. So there can be space for you in your uniqueness in these
absolutely.
spaces, but you have to be willing to step into that and say, I'm going to choose to be a little different than maybe what everyone else is doing. And I'm going to
It actually
make
is
that my
strength.
differentiator. I'm going to make that how I market my business. I'm going to make how I market myself. That I think that's where I feel like some people, we don't do that very well. We want to go in where everyone else is going because that seems to be the right answer. Well, they're successful. We can just model what they are doing. And 9 times out of 10, that's not the right direction to go.
No, or being everything to everybody. And it turns out nobody feels that you're for them.
Or
Right.
use that same thing. Well, I never say the whole saying because I think the whole saying is actually better, but oh, now I've forgotten it. I'm having a senior moment.
You're not old enough to have this
It's like
senior
jack of all
moment.
trades, master of none.
Yes. Yeah, exactly.
It's that thing like but again, that's because that's something I always encourage people to do. Like when they're struggling, do you uniquely bring to the table that no one else does?
Well, and here's the good news. There's never been a better time to stand out as an individual. We are in a time of high corporate and political mistrust, and people trust people, not logos, the way that they used to. And
That
so
is so true.
having a unique voice, cutting through and speaking directly to your audience about what you stand for, what you don't, what you offer, who you offer it for. I mean, there's a reason why as soon as you land on my website, it it helps my prospects to self-qualify or disqualify. It's very clear this is for firms who want to break the mold, who are ready to take action, who know that they want to pivot and stand out. And it's okay if that's not you. But if that's the case, we're not the consultants for you. So,
Hey, because there's someone else
correct. And the
that
truth
approaches
is,
it in the way they're going to need it. And it's just
right,
a matter of finding the right fit for you.
right.
Yeah.
And that's right. And I want the clients that I know are going to be good fits for us, right? Unique solutions, bespoke to you,
Yeah.
really digging into how your team works, creating it your way, making you think outside the box, making sure you're delivering more value to your employees and your clients. That's not for everybody. Some people are okay with high volume, lower cost, churn it out. There's a place for that in the market. Absolutely. And there's nothing wrong with that.
Well, and again, it's if you are, for anybody who's listening and you're in a place where you feel stuck, hopefully this is serving as a little bit of inspiration that
Hopefully.
it can feel very scary though to say, hey, I'm gonna like step out of the lane that feels comfortable because that's what everyone else does, and I'm gonna try to
Gosh, isn't it
differentiate myself.
scarier to
It can be
be?
very scary, but I also think it's absolutely terrifying to stay where you are and be
Yeah.
as miserable as humanly possible.
It's scary to be stuck, I think. I think it's worse. What do you have to lose?
Well, and again, there's ways to do it where you can do it incrementally. So it's not like we're
Right.
saying go blow up your life, go quit your job,
No,
but
but
there are
try
ways
it.
to
Test it.
incrementally make shifts that may result in a much greater outcome than you ever dreamed possible by just simply staying where you are.
That's right.
Well, I have loved this conversation. I love that you have come on. I love your energy and your passion for this topic.
Thank
Um,
you.
it's so needed, and to your point, there's just so much. I feel like this right now in the world, there's just so much heavy, and so to be able to talk with people who are coming at it from a let's whack some shit, excuse my expression, let's just go
Yeah,
after it. Like we don't have to just sit and wait for things to happen. We can be very proactive and shake some things up, and in the shaking
correct.
may be our magic. And I love that about you, and I'm so grateful you took some time to be on the show. And I'm hopeful that we'll have you back around for some stuff in the future. But before we go, I just want to say, like, do you have one final thought? Anything you want to share with the listeners before we go?
I'll just say, if you're a professional services firm and you are ever interested in having a sounding board, stress testing a strategy, I share my insights very freely. And I welcome any conversation. And it's really been a pleasure. Thank you so much for having me on today.
Well, and thank you for that very generous offer. I highly recommend you take her up on it. If you've listened, clearly she is brilliant. So
Thank
um,
you.
I just,
Your check
I,
is in the mail. Which is
All right.
nice.
But with that, I will have all information. So I'll have like where links to find her on LinkedIn and her website and all that stuff in the show notes. And just thank you again. I just truly appreciate you taking the time to come on the show.
Thanks for having me, friend.
You're welcome. Anytime. I've got two things before I let you go. One, if you've ever gotten any value from the show, please leave a 5-star review. It really helps and absolutely makes my day. The second thing is if you have any thoughts you'd like to share with me, please shoot me an email at podcast@kimberlyjbenoit.com. I'd love to hear from you. All right, see you in the next episode.